Hi, and welcome to the live cast today. Got Tim, got Laurie, got Rick, and we're talking today about 12 simple ways to get better at game development. I'm reading it on the screen because Clever Tim has got it sliding across. We're going to talk about things, and I've got a controversial idea. I'm trying to make some formulas about how much you should do this and how much you should do that. Tim and Laurie are like, that sounds like the best idea ever, so we'll see how we go. It might get canned halfway through. But Tim, kick us off. What do we need to know about?
So we're talking about 12 simple things, 12 simple ways to get better at game development. And some of these are going to conflict with each other, so that's totally normal, but let's talk about them. Number one, let's play more games. So Rick actually may not agree with this.
My knee-jerk reaction is like, stop playing games, you lazy procrastinating sod. Like, get back to work. So how many more games should I play, and which games? Like,
So
why on
I should-
earth would you tell a game developer to play more games? They're like, got it, there we go. Thanks, I can just close up Unity, and here we go. I'm going to start.
Boom.
Tim Rustwick
Game
told me to
developer.
play more games and do less work.
Yeah, so this is going to depend on like where you're at in the game dev journey and how many games you actually play, right? Like if you're like an esports legend and you're putting 60 hours a week playing games and doing your stuff, probably don't need to play more games. You're probably good. You're good at that level. I think what I mean by this is play a larger breadth of games. So
Play
a lot
different
of people,
games. Is that what you're saying?
they stick to their genres usually and play the ones they like, but try playing some ones you don't like. Try understanding what you like about them and what you don't like about them. Something like Game Pass has changed my game design life because now suddenly I can go on Game Pass and I can just look at 5 or 10 of them. I can install them and just kind of play them rapidly back to back and figure out what I like about their opening part, what I don't like, what hooked me about them. And then a lot of times I've realized that I don't actually know what I'm talking about and I'm actually wrong. I downloaded Power Wash Simulator a while back because I was like, this looks like the dumbest game I could ever play. So I'm going to play this to understand why it's popular. And then 2 hours later, I was like, I haven't done the flower pot yet. Where is the flower pot? I need to get to the flower pot. So you may get caught off guard with some of that stuff. And you don't know until you kind of experience the breadth of what's out there and try to understand what people like about it.
Laurie, what would you say is the right percentage formula relationship between the amount of time you're spending building your game and the amount of time you're doing Tim Rustwick, TM, copyrighted, play more games? Like, what would you...
I think it's like 99% games and then 1% game development.
Oh, Laurie. Oh,
no,
Laurie.
That's not the right answer.
Everyone at home, she was joking. Don't do that.
No.
So
I was thinking
worried this
10% maybe.
conversation-
I don't
people are
know.
gonna-
Like 10% research is what I would consider
research.
it almost.
Research.
I mean, who gets
What I
into
write down
game
on my
development
taxes.
who doesn't
I
like
tell
games?
my wife, why are you playing games? I gotta research. I'm sorry. Haven't you researched this game a lot?
I also
Well,
like
it's
the
a very
term
big game.
concepting. I use that a lot. I'm concepting right now. In here.
You know, when you go in with the mindset of, and I think that's what we have to clarify too, is not just like playing games, right? But like going in with the mindset of like, what's cool about this? What's bad about this? What do I like? What do I dislike? Like, do I like the colors here? Do I like this thing? Do I like any of this stuff? Going in with kind of an objective discovery perspective and like figuring out what's cool about a game, I think can give you some insights that you otherwise wouldn't have had.
Okay, so I've got
I showed it a little fast,
tangible-
but did you see the comment on the screen? It was really
Yes.
good. Play lots of games written by indie devs, even game jammed games, because I feel like that gives you more of an idea of like what's out there, what you can do,
Yeah.
what's available for indie devs.
sure.
I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, itch.io is a great place to go to find some stuff like that. Specifically, and ldjam.com after the Ludum Dares. I think it's like 3 times a year these days. But yeah, you can play a bunch of games. It's extra cool to play game jam games because you can get a bunch of different games based on the same concept or the same theme. So you can kind of see, oh, what do they do differently?
So, what was the question I was going to ask? In terms of how you go about doing that. So we've got some folks out watching us who are probably, money bags, and they've just like, whatever, I'll buy all the things. If we're saying to people play more games, but they've got a budget, and you've already given one suggestion, but what would be the here's how you can research more games. Research more games, I think, is possibly what you're saying here, Tim. Rather than play more games, research more games. How do you research more games if you've got whatever a budget of $20 a month to spend on this?
I got a couple things for you. Game Pass, obviously, I mentioned that. If you don't have an Epic account, you should create one. You should hang out there,
Oh, that's a good point.
twice, 2 or 3
Tell us-
times a week or a
Tell
month.
us why that is. Why? What is Epic?
They give out free games routinely, usually, and you can claim them forever, and you can just build out a library. If you have Amazon Prime, you can hook your account with Twitch, and Twitch also gives out free games every month through Twitch Gaming or whatever it is. So you can claim those games there. You can get a lot of games like that. And then itch.io itself is just a flood of free, awesome, cool little indie projects. You can play those across the internet. Itch is like the place to find all the small indie micro stuff. So you don't have to spend a dime on games, honestly. There's if you want to like go and research and find cool stuff, you totally can without spending a penny.
The huge thing, I would say, someone on a budget, I've played thousands of games for free by watching them on YouTube. And so that's not playing it. You're not actively like, woohoo, I did the jump. But if you're doing this for research, you can get nearly everything you need from a research standpoint, because you can see that's the characters, that's the story, that's the UI. So on to Tim's point number 2, good segue. You don't have to go and actually buy them and play them. You can watch. And for me, that's my first thing. If someone's like, have you played such and such? If I haven't, or I'm getting old, my memory goes, so maybe I have. I go YouTube, type in the name. I usually type in gameplay at the end of it. So if it's, whatever, happy fun game gameplay, so that I'm not getting the promo trailers, etc. I just go and skim through. I'm like, that's the sort of game that this is. Oh, that's what's going on. So I get a feel for it very quickly.
That's how I talk about Celeste. Like I played it. I played about, I don't know, half, 1/3 maybe. But I watched my friend play it, and we like talked the whole time he played it. He was streaming, and I was the only one watching. But and we would solve puzzles and stuff, and I'd be talking to him. And I feel like I played Celeste because I watched the whole thing and I interacted with him the whole time. And so it's like you really can do it by watching or interacting like that.
Laurie, you're the greatest audience member in the game development community. You were watching our live streams and listening to our live streams for years. Every single time, it's like you're like, if I'm having an audience, you're in seat number 1. Watching your friend play Celeste, and you're the only one there, and you're like, well, you're doing great.
Well, we were playing Celeste together, but not actually playing it together.
And that's the feeling that like YouTubers and streamers can give you, right?
Yeah,
like
it
it can give you the experience. The other thing it can do is like you can pay more attention to the game on screen because you're not the one trying to figure out and entertain an audience at the same time. So a lot of times you can actually pick up more if you're watching videos. One of my favorite of all time YouTubers is Splattercat Gaming, and the videos I watch a couple times a week these days, but for a good year or 2, they were part of my daily routine because he posts daily videos every single day of a new indie game. And I would watch them every single day, how he played them, how he interacted with them, the first 30 minutes of any given indie game. And it's fantastic. You can learn an absolute ton from watching someone else play games and understanding what they like and what they don't like. The other thing is, if you're looking for commercial kind of games, if you want to make games on Steam and stuff like that, going to a channel like Splattercat's channel and looking at the views for each video and seeing which videos do well and which videos don't do well, that's a good indicator of what people are interested in too, right? Like what titles or what thumbnails they click on and that kind of thing.
I like that from a research standpoint, for sure. If you're thinking, is my game going to do well? Pop this back up. My game going to do well? Is there demand for it? Is it the right genre to be getting into? If you find a streamer who's playing that genre, that type of game with excitement, then you're like, cool. If that one is exciting people, then mine can excite people. So I think there's room in the market for 100 great platformers, 100 great shooters, 100 great whatever. So don't feel... I've seen this happen a lot with beginners, is they're working on a game, they're like, damn, a game just released that's like my game. I may as well just, go follow Tim Ruswick rule number 1. Reminder of rule number 1, play more games. I may as well just go do that and not bother working. Working, going to get so mad at me by the end of this conversation.
That happened with me. I was working on a game. I was working on some of the art, and then I found out a game exactly like it came out. And then someone else was like, maybe that meant it was a good idea, and it wouldn't have been like that game. You should have just done it anyway. And I was like, looking back at the art, I'm thinking about it.
Yes. If you go and ask people, have you seen this game that I'm worried about that's come out? 98% of people are like, no idea. And this is one of the fundamentals of if you're making a product, that the product itself is part of the magic, but a big part of the magic is getting it in front of people. And that's the part where you need to work on your marketing, and you need to make sure that you've got something that stands out and get your gifts all constructed. But just because there's another game like yours out there doesn't mean your game is doomed for failure. Like Laurie's saying, it could be, people would be excited. I'd happily have 2 great games that are exactly the sort of games I like to play.
Yeah.
Well, the truth is, if I ask people about it, nobody's heard of the game either, the other game. So it was definitely something I didn't have to toss.
A lot of people don't realize that's how humans work too. When you play a game you like, what do most people do? They want to find more games like that. It's immediately what they do. They look on Steam, they look for the tags, they look on whatever console they're choosing is like, it's a really good sign. And in the startup world, they call it market validation, right? The fact that someone has come in with a product similar to yours and it sells, like that's good. There's a market for it. Burger King sets up across the street from McDonald's. They're not saying, oh, McDonald's is stealing our customers. They're saying, no, there's a market for hamburgers on that corner. Let's move in.
This is where people go to eat. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're literally right next to each other near me. Yeah, right next to each other.
They do that on purpose because they know that one of them validated the market. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they just play music that attracts dogs, and then they've got all the... Anyway, let's not go there. So I've got a final point on the watching Let's Play streamers. To get to our topic here is 12 simple ways to get better at game development. Don't just watch them and be like, oh, that was kind of fun. Oh, that's what this game's about. Get your notepad. Remember notepads, everyone? Notepad and pen, like old school. And write down every time the YouTuber or streamer gets excited about something in the game. Write down why they got excited. This is really critical because that's how you get that virality in a game. If a streamer is playing a game, they're like, this is kind of fun, they're just in the zone, no one's going to watch it, they don't care. But if they get, oh my god, my ship blew up, or whoa, there's 100 of those things, or what do I do now, or look at that, or that's beautiful, then take note of that. Those peaks in the emotion of the person who's playing it is what you need to capture yourself. So then distill that down. If they got excited when there was a lot of explosions, like, okay, how can I get a lot of explosions into my game? And when do I trigger them? And how frequently do I do them? This YouTuber got excited the first 4 times of explosions, and then after that didn't even mention it. Okay, that's worth noting.
There's also no higher grade of honesty than a streamer's chat. Let me just say that. So if you read the chat while someone's playing a game and they're tearing it apart, they're probably being honest. They're just telling you exactly what they hate. And you can take notes of that. Like, oh, they don't like this part. Oh, this part's boring to watch. Oh, this part's exciting to watch. And that's an important part of games these days. Like, not only how fun is it, but how fun is it for other people to watch it?
Yes. Cool.
All right.
What's point number 3, Tim?
Point number 3 is join game jams. And this is a point we mentioned plenty of times on the podcast, but I think a lot of people kind of skip it or put it into a slot that it is one of those things you do later. But if you go to itch.io/jams, you can see every game jam currently running in the game dev sphere, and you can actually click join, and you can just join one of those games, and you can start making a game right there and practice your skill live, like in an actual setting where people will play your game afterwards. And it's really fun. And it's really cool, and it's really worth it.
Yeah, I feel like we have talked about game jams a lot, so I'm trying to cherry pick what's the 1 or 2 best points to make here, without going and stealing Tim's other points 4 through 12, which I sometimes do in these conversations.
I thought that was the point of you doing this. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Yeah.
If he skips around, just click the number.
If it's your first game jam, just try to get something that starts has a minute of fun, and then ends. That's all you're trying to do in your first game jam or your second game jam. So, that does lead to point. I should look at these things. I should actually see what you've gone and created for your point system. Okay, let's get into that next one then, because join game jams makes sense. Itch is a great place to do that. Build smaller things that take less time, that are trying to do less features. We talked about this a lot last week or the week before in terms of how to start in game development. But just don't try to have your game. Okay, let me make this more specific. Don't try to innovate on your game when you're new to making games. And after you've made a game or two, then innovate on one thing. So if you're making a shooter, don't innovate on, the characters are going to be amazing and the world's going to blow up and I'm going to have this really interesting story and whatever. To everything else, just generic, normal controls, normal enemies, normal pathfinding, normal story, just what everyone would expect. You followed your tutorial and you're just doing it the way they're doing it, and take one thing where you say this one thing is going to be awesome. Maybe that's the way you do the lighting. So everything is dark, but when you shoot, it all blinks light. Or what was the game we looked at a while ago? Super Hot, was it? That when you move, the game flows, and when you're not moving, the game stops. That's one innovative thing. They did a whole bunch of other innovative things, but you could choose that one thing.
Yeah, so small is so important, and I think it's probably one of the biggest problems with newer developers is that they don't understand scope, and ideas that they think are small are actually very large, just because there's a lot of stuff under the hood that they don't see yet. And so you can start as small as you possibly can and realize that it still might be bigger than it should be. And so
now, what do you do if you have an idea? This definitely didn't happen to me. And you have a friend who has great ideas, and you kind of snowball on each other, and now you have a great idea, but it's way too big for your first game. What do you do in that situation? Not that that's happened to me.
Yeah, I think, first of all, there's no right answer to this, right? Because there are definitely exceptions to every rule, and people have succeeded on their own doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But if something gets too big, I think you should figure out whether it's bloated, whether it could be stripped down, or whether it's something that you should make at a later time, right? There's nothing wrong with that, making it later. Most of the time, it tends to get bloated in the beginning. Like there's just so many cool ideas. There's so many things you can do. It's so exciting, like so easy to add stuff, right? Like just add all the things and make all the cool stuff. And you end up with kind of something that's a little bit too big to manage. And even if it doesn't seem like it, once you start building it, you're like, oh, this is a little bit too big to manage.
It's like the idea is, hey Tim, let's just go for an evening stroll from New York to Los Angeles. That sounds good. Yeah, let's go do that. And you get an hour down the road and you realize, oh, okay, that's how long it takes to walk from that place to that place. So it's usually what you're saying is usually mid-flow. You realize, I didn't know anything about that, and now I know. Yikes. What do you do when you're mid-flow? That's the tough bit. You've committed to walking to LA, and you've told all your friends, we're going to walk to LA tonight. It's going to be amazing. And then you realize you're such a dumbass. Do you just flip the table and hop in an Uber? You're like, I'm not going to walk at all. Do you get there and say, well, actually, it's nice to walk just around the apartments. So how do you take a game feature and
this is a hot
take it smaller? Had an idea on here. Could pick one part and flesh it out. That's probably a good idea.
Yeah, I think that
way focus on one little bit of it.
Yeah, I think the problem that I see with that, and that definitely works. If you know what you're doing, 100%, you can do that. A lot of times you don't know, you end up with the same problem, right? So you'll pick one part, you'll flesh it out, and then it'll be this big thing again, and it'll just keep on going. So this is a hot take, and this is a controversial opinion, but I'm actually a fan of quitting. I believe in quitting. I think quitting is important. I think quitting, when you understand that what you're building is too large and you understand the reasons why you should start something smaller, I think it's okay to quit. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't think it's a shame thing. I don't think it's a failure. I don't think it's any of that. I think you're smart enough to realize, like, hey, this thing is too big for me at this point in time, right? You shouldn't walk from LA to New York, because a lot of people don't realize, especially people like, I was talking to my friend who lives in the UK, and I was trying to describe to him just how big the United States is. And so we pulled up a map and we were looking at UK, and I was like, dude, like my state of Florida is like bigger than your country. And then there's 50 of them. Like it's massive. So like not really understanding that sense of scale, I think it can get you in a lot of problems, and it's way better to quit early than it is to quit halfway down that walk when you've already expended your muscle and you're halfway dead in the desert and there's crows flying around. Like, yeah, you can quit at that point too, but like you're in a lot more dangerous of a situation.
I think you need to build it into your project flow, because if you're keen to go outside and go for a walk and you've never walked before, you've got absolutely no idea. And you can ask people and you can listen to what they've got to say. They're going to say things like, well, it depends, and you don't have that nuanced understanding yet. So you just got to open your door and start walking. It's the same with game development. I'm going to make my MMORPG, and you give it whatever, a couple of weeks, and you realize at some point, oh, now I understand. It's like, fantastic. You just learned the lesson that you needed to learn. What do you do now? You don't need to keep going on that same path.
Right.
You put a huge big tick in the box and say, I am now knowledgeable. I've got the skills and experience to have learned that thing. Now I know. Now I know how long that takes. So I don't think we should berate ourselves, like you say, Tim, for stopping on a project. You should get, as soon as you have that awareness, this is going to take too long, I don't have the skills, you're like, stop it and go do something where you can have a win. You got to have wins, I think.
A smaller thing.
So so now you're thinking in terms of smaller things, and that leads us to point number 5, which is like seriously way smaller than you're even thinking now. Like whatever you think is small, make it smaller, because I guarantee you it's going to get bigger as you work on it. Okay? Like this needs to be driven home.
Got a question for you, Tim. How do you make something that's still going to be enjoyable if you're stripping out all the parts of it that you thought were enjoyable? For example, let's take a genre so we can make this tangible. Laurie, perhaps you can pick a genre for us of a game that you would potentially like to make. Please don't say puzzle games, because I don't understand them well enough. So what game can you like?
A sorting game? I don't know. That's the other apparently I like puzzle games.
What sort of game did you say?
Sorting. I'm trying to think of my ideas that I've had.
Is that where two people like sword against each other with swords?
Well, the other game that I had that was one that was the one that was seen was just a beekeeping game, and you keep bees and you have different areas with different flowers. You go and pick the flowers, and depending on what you get to, beautiful. It's a simple game.
Yeah, so what's the one most important part of a beekeeping game that you have to have no matter what?
Bees, honey.
Bees. Yeah. So that, I would say, that is the recipe. The question I just asked Laurie is what you ask yourself. So she's got to have bees in her game. If she goes and makes flowers and makes this complicated like flocking system with the bees and a honey production system and a way to eat the honey and nutrition, it's like, oh crap, my bees still don't kind of work properly. So you start off with bees. What is the single most important thing for bees to do in your beekeeping game?
Find flowers.
Find flowers. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. That could be it. That could be the entire game.
That was the game. It was.
What they do when they get the flowers. It could just be the bee found the flower. So,
I like that.
And how do you make that interesting to the player then? What's the choice or the decision that the players are making in this bees finding flowers game?
It was an economy game where it's depending on what flowers you use, you get more money for your honey.
Okay.
And some are rare and some are depending on which area you're in.
That's a system or a mechanic, or in a way it's also thematic. What do I do as a player to have my bees finding flowers? Like, am I giving them a path? Am I just setting them free? Am I planting the flowers? Do I control the bees or the flowers or the weather? Like, what am I actually doing? And I think this is right here is what do I do? This is where you scope it down. So let's see what your natural instinct is with your, let's make an amazing hat on, and then Tim and I will destroy your dreams and try to squash it.
My hat is always making things bigger, so we'll pretend like I have the other.
Well, so what are you doing as a player in your beat? This is a great game, by the way. Hope no one steals it.
It was pixel. I figured whatever. I'm fine with that. Yeah, I
we
had
know
pixel art.
we know they're not going to steal it.
It's so
They want
good.
you to
No,
make it.
feel free.
They want you to make it, then they'll steal it when you've had a lot of success. That's the way these things work.
That is true, actually.
Yeah.
So you
Sorry,
would, I'm trying to find the art, but you would, you had like your own little house, and you go out and you'd search and find different flowers, and your bee would go out and get them and then come back. And my favorite part was that I wanted to have like different time periods and stuff like that, but I knew that was too big.
Yeah. So I'm going to keep pushing you on this because
Oh no.
Perfect. This is exactly perfect. When you hand the game to me, so you're like, hey, Rick, can you play my game? What do I do? What am I controlling? Who am I? Am I God? Am I
You're
the bee? Am I
a
the
little
flowers?
beekeeper.
I'm a beekeeper. So am I third person running around in a world?
Pixel, 2D pixel in a world, yeah.
2D pixel. And so
I really have to pull this art up, huh? It's really cute. It's very simple.
do I go over to flowers and do things? Do I like what do I exactly do? And sorry to be pushing you on this, but this is I think hopefully
It's
this
fine.
helps folks when they're in the world of crafting their game and thinking thematic and thinking art and thinking story and thinking outcomes. If you can pull your mind all the way back to just the fundamental mechanic of what the player does, are you walking around and clicking on flowers, for example? So what in your game, you might not have designed it yet, so designing on the fly, what do I do?
It was going to be, you set up your bee station. I don't even know what they're called. I'm not really a beekeeper. Your bee area, your bee hives. That's what they're called.
Hives. I think hive is the official.
Hives.
Yeah.
And then you would go out and find like different, you decide where you're setting up your beehives. That's what it would be, depending on where the flowers were. And you would set up your beehives, and then those bees would give you certain honey. Okay, I was also doing research on bees, so I'm not even sure if that exactly works like that, but.
Yep. So I walk over to beehives, and then I walk them to flowers, and I'm strategically placing them in particular spots near flowers.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's tangible. That could be, this is the game. That's it. You just grab a beehive and you put it in a spot, and you do that. And then if you get that done, then you can add the next bit to it. So for example, you can add, maybe there's a radius around the honey, around the beehives. Maybe certain flowers, do certain things to the bees or have a different value, or the economy you're talking about. But right at the core, getting the process of placing beehives, getting that feeling nice is your game.
I want to point out too that I could totally imagine a version of this in Unreal Engine in 3D with epic lighting, where you're this beekeeper in a bee suit and you're running around an open world, right? Like that.
Is that where you're going?
Same concept could totally be of that scale, or it can be top-down 2D, and just that decision right there immediately eliminates a lot of scope, right? So just kind of the constraint of putting it into top-down 2D can remove basically an entire dimension of the Z-axis in a way, right? Like there's a lot of stuff like that you can do to make your game simpler. I think too, what we just kind of illustrated with this whole thing is that a lot of people, they mistake complexity for depth or for as a good thing sometimes, right? They just think if they add more stuff, the game gets better. But sometimes the game gets better by taking stuff away, right? With the beekeeper game, same kind of deal, right? Like you could totally have an open world for bees and unlimited amounts of flowers and all this stuff. But at some point, it's too much, and then it's a little bit too much to handle. This is adorable.
There's my little bee house. I was taking the pixel art course. I always talk about the courses, and here's the little dude my daughter made.
This is adorable.
And then he bounces up and down. I animated him a little bit. That was very simple 2D.
Have you looked at the 2D? I'm guessing yes, if we see a character, but the GameDev.tv pixel art character course?
Well, I went through it when I have gone through it. I haven't done the actual characters. Well, I did some of it actually. Yeah, it's really good. I really liked it. Cool. This was the first pixel course I used. But
that's great.
And I started doing Blender, and I'm obsessed with Blender. So
I feel like we need to link our pixel course now.
I'm telling you, your bee game, Laurie, the point we've got to in terms of, okay, I'm a 2D pixel art character. I'm grabbing beehives and I'm putting them in spots. I think you can take a certain amount of time. I would take a number of weeks in the engine, just playing around with mechanics and ideas on that. So, for example, just quickly and roughly coding up, I move thing over there, and if I put it on good soil, it does something. Or if I put it near lots of flowers, it does something. Or maybe I'm moving and placing that, but I'm also able to go and get a seed and plant a flower. And then I'm also walking over and grabbing the watering can and watering the flower. So the game is a little bit like those organization games, the house cleaning game, the cooking games, where I'm getting an ingredient. It's like recipe. I'm getting an ingredient, I'm putting it there, I'm putting it here, and then the decision comes from limited space and maybe different soil types. I think someone in the chat was suggesting that. And so then take a couple of weeks where it's all rough and you know, you're throwing things away and you're not worrying about whether your code looks good. Like, okay, what if I then have some wind? Okay, I'm just going to make everything shift to the left by 2 pixels at some point. Does that mean everything breaks or whatever? So I think you can just play around with that. And at some point you'll say, oh, this is yuck when I'm walking there, walking here, walking there, walking there. That's no fun. I don't like that at all. And so you're designing your game as you go, starting this one core concept, which is I'm a beekeeper, I'm getting things, and I'm putting things. Like that's your game. And then your game's going to emerge out of that to the point where you find this is the part that's joyful in my game.
I like the naming or different recipes and stuff. That's how honey is named, by the geolocation of the bees and the types of flowers and stuff like that. Did I tell you guys I was a honey salesman for years, and I've been to lots of bee farms?
Sure.
I didn't mention that. I probably should have mentioned that.
Wow.
Yeah, I did that for a long time.
Wow.
I like
honey.
I
spilled a 55-gallon drum of honey at a bee farm.
I don't like honey that much.
No,
rage,
bees loved it
like
though, and they went crazy. That was.
And did a bear run in the room as well? Was it Yogi?
I had to clean it up with a dustpan off a concrete floor while bees were acting crazy. It's like swimming in $1 million bills for them. Like they.
I feel like we're seeing Tim reliving it right now in front of us.
Dude, I'm also
I got my first
picturing
bee sting there as a kid.
Some weird kind of house that you got stuck in, and there was some weird punishment of like, oops, I spilled the honey. Here you go, Tim. Here's your dustpan. Here's your maid's outfit. You clean up that honey while bees sting you, and we all watch. Anyway, this is getting dark.
Tim's making a honey horror movie. A horror game, I mean.
Exactly.
You know what? Some of those honey farms, man, they could be for sure. They're like old abandoned buildings and stuff. No, it was more of an accident with a forklift, though.
Okay.
Long story.
Yeah.
I posted a link. We have a pixel and game art bundle live for Black Friday. If anybody's interested in,
I'm really not mentioning it to sell it. Like literally, I love that pixel art. It made me feel like I could do pixel art. I love that. Course.
It looks fantastic. You guys did a great job on it.
Pixel art is such a wonderful way to make your own things for your game, without having to use an asset pack, without having to learn 3D art. It's quick. Like you can make something really quickly. I think that looks competent. It's the quickest of all the skills in game development, I believe, pixel art. It's quicker than learning programming. It's quicker than coming up with spectacular designs. It's quicker than 3D, than texturing. I think pixel art's the quickest way to have a win in game development. Cool. What's point number 6?
We got a little lost there. Number 6.
Honey Tim. Good old Honey Tim.
Oh, no. Don't make that thing, please.
Honey Spiller Tim. There we go.
Show your things to more people and get feedback. So this can be scary when you're starting out and you made a thing and you want to share it with somebody, and really what you want them to say is good job, but they say, I don't get it. And then they go on their phone and you're just like heartbroken. It can happen. Or they'd be like, yeah, this game sucks, but sometimes they're like, oh, this is really cool. I really like this idea. I really like this concept. Either way, what you end up learning is you learn kind of how you can improve it. You learn the good things about it, the bad things about it, and it helps you pay attention to what you're working on. Because sometimes, Lori mentioned puzzle games, right? Like puzzle games are definitely one of those games that you have to test with people, because you may design a puzzle and think like, oh, this is super easy. People will just go here and they'll click that button and it'll be fine. And then they'll play the puzzle and they'll have no idea what's going on. So getting feedback from other people and showing your things to more people can actually make you better at game development.
Do you feel like that applies to just the game, or like even doing game jams and then getting the feedback from that, since we were talking about game jams earlier? That's where I got a lot of feedback.
Yeah, I actually think that's a pro strat to get a lot of feedback quickly, is to join game jams, right? Because you can join and then you submit, and then at the end of the game jam, everybody plays each other's games. And so since you're playing other people's games, they have incentive to play yours, and you usually get a lot more feedback that way quickly from a lot of people that join the game jam. Where to show your game?
Yeah, there's one really easy place to share your game. If it's a standard, if it's a game that you can create as a WebGL game, then you can go to sharemygame.com, and this is a GameDev.tv affiliated, sponsored, created place where you can go, you just put your game there, and then you can share it with people. There's tons of stuff here. A lot of people, when they're going through our courses, we encourage them to go to sharemygame.com, just pop your game up there. Then this is a way that you can then share it with your friends very easily without having to send them a file or something. So that's the number one place. The other place, obviously, Tim's talked about even today, is itch.io, where you can go put your game up there for free as well. So
you can also put it in our Discord too. You can share stuff around there. We got plenty of people that would love to give you feedback and help you out.
To be honest, there's two types of sharing, right? One sharing is, I've launched my game, I'm trying to get customers, and I'm going to harass people. Hey, buy my game, leave me a 5-star review, buy my game, make me money. People don't like that. Like, I don't think anyone likes to be sold to that way, particularly when it's just straight up blatant advertising. However, in our community, well, I shouldn't say everyone, but in our community, it's highly encouraged and highly supported if you say, I'm working on this, check it out. I'm halfway through it. I've started it. Here's a prototype. Here's a video. Here's a file you can download. Here's a demo. So share it regularly within our community, as Tim said, over on Discord. Let us know what you're up to. And it might only be 3 people that have a look at it, but those 3 people are going to give you some thoughts, which is great. And then if anyone gives you any ideas, connect with that person. Thanks very much. How can I help you? Hey, do you want to look at my game again in the future? That's a sort of connection that you want to nurture. And if you're starting out, you don't have a lot of people that you're talking to. As soon as you find someone who's engaged with you, engage back with them and offer help to them and build that up. Before you know it, a couple of months go by, you've got 30 people that you're chatting to, and you're helping them, they're helping you, and you've got support, and you've got community, and you've got, as Tim's saying, you've got people that you can show your game to and get feedback on.
For sure. How do you find game jams? Well, I illustrated this earlier, but I probably should just show you guys. If you go to itch.io/jams, you will see this lovely interface that shows you all of the game jams currently running and how far they run into the future. If you click on any of these, like this is a 20-second game jam. This actually is really cool. This is about the first 20 seconds, I think. A mini game that lasts exactly 20 seconds. Like, this is a really cool one to join.
I'm a huge fan of that kind of stuff.
My favorite one was the 60-second game I joined.
Really?
Like 60 seconds. That was it.
Yeah.
60 seconds, yeah.
That's a really cool way to keep your scope small, right? So
you
go to itch.io/jams, you click on one, you hit join jam. If you've already got an account, boom, you join, and then you can start making a game. And then you just, this join button will turn into a submit button, and you just upload your game that way. And that's how you do it. It's really that simple. And each jam has its own rules and its own theme and stuff. So read the page on the actual jam. But most of the time, they're not like, crazy rules with ridiculous regulations and all that stuff. It's kind of just like, make cool stuff. Here's the theme. So, yeah, it's pretty easy to do. That brings us to number 8. Make bad things on purpose. So it is my opinion that a lot of people tend to overcomplicate what they're creating out of insecurity. They tend to add a lot of stuff to their game because they think it's not good enough, right? And so they want to add more stuff to make it better because they think adding more stuff makes it better. And sometimes perfectionism or insecurity, all that stuff gets in the way of creating good stuff because you add too much, or you just go too far, or you make the scope too big and you never finish it. Like, there's a lot of things that happen, right? So I had this weird philosophy where sometimes making bad stuff on purpose can actually really help, right? Like, it can make you push forward when you otherwise wouldn't push forward. There was a game jam that had the theme that I thought was the worst theme ever created. It was like, combine two incompatible genres. That was the theme. And I was just like, this is the dumbest theme. Like, they're cool. Incompatible. Why would you want to like join them, right? Because it's just, that's a bad theme. But because I was like, all right, I'm going to make a bad game. Like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to make a bad game. And that game was one of the most fun games I've ever made because I was just like, I'm making it bad on purpose. We added in some gnomes. We added in an angry old man that flicked you off. We turned it into like a military simulator with gnomes, and there was explosions and plants were shooting tomatoes at you. And like, you're trying to guard these gnomes as like VIPs and escort them to the back. Basically, we made a reverse tower defense. We combined shooters with tower defense game, but you were like going through the towers yourself with your team. But we made it like military and crazy stuff, and old man was yelling at you. And that freedom would have never happened if I didn't try to make a bad thing, right? Like, I just tried to make really bad stuff. And I think it can do a lot for you if you have perfectionism, if you're worried about, you know, your scope being too big, or you're worried about people hating your stuff. It can also it can help you move through things quicker, right? Like, you might spend 5 hours on that thing, but if you're trying to make a bad thing, you might only spend 20 minutes on it, which will get you the next thing, which can help you make more progress. So it's just something to think about from that perspective.
I see that in game jams sometimes with like bad art, and like, it's a thing now too. I mean, there's memes and stuff about bad art. So just make a game with, don't spend a ton of time on the art, just make bad art, just do it. People do that all the time in game jams. Also, we did skip number 7, I believe.
Did we skip number 7?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, okay, well, I'm being Rick now. I'm skipping around. Number 7, minusing 1 from number 8, is to give feedback and play other devs' games. So number 6 was show your things to more people and get feedback. Giving feedback can actually help. And this kind of goes back to the game jam stuff that we were talking about. You can join a game jam, you can submit a game, and then you can play everyone else's game from the same sort of game jam and figure out what they did differently, but also figure out like what you like and don't like about their representation of the thing.
Yep, totally.
Should we move on to number 9? Rick kind of highlighted this a little bit, but make friends with people interested in game dev. So
that kind of went with 6, whatever the last one.
Yeah, we're making bad things on purpose right now, and we're living our dreams here. But yeah, so a couple things. One, when you've got people around you, you're more likely to do it more often, right? Just because other people are doing it, you're surrounding yourself with it, you're kind of more immersed in the subject. But 2, I think something goes for, how can I say this? I think being immersed in a subject and surrounding yourself with other people that like your hobby, whatever it is, not just game dev, right? But people that are interested in the same hobby as you, makes you want to get more involved in that hobby, makes you want to do more of that thing, makes you want to get better at that thing, you know? And also it can be kind of supportive because you can play their thing, they can play your thing. You can give feedback. You can talk about ideas. You can talk about concepts. I'm of the proponent to never dev alone. Even if you're making your game by yourself, you can still do it with other people, right? Other people around. Join communities, Discords, servers, you know, forums, all that kind of stuff.
And it doesn't have to be significant. Like, you can just have a chat with someone in a chat room. Like, hey, you know, what are you up to? Cool, that's great. And you feel that connection. It doesn't have to be, hi, do you want to meet up in person? And oh my God, what do I wear? If you make it too heavy and too significant, then it can be weird. And I know a lot of us, when we're working at home, you don't want that pressure. But just having a chat with someone, particularly looking at what they're up to and saying, oh, this is really good. Keep up the good work. Giving encouragement is a great way to get encouragement. Being kind to people is a great way to feel good about yourself. So it's really important that you participate. And I think people who are watching this now are the participators. So we're talking preaching to the choir, as they say. Do they say that in the United States of the America?
Yes, we do.
Okay, cool.
Even just keeping good interactions with people and like knowing people a lot of times, like I mentioned the Discord all the time, but just knowing people from the Discord and what their strengths are really can help you if you're stuck with something, if you need help with something. Then
Yeah.
those people are at the same level as you. So you're not asking like super, the people who don't have time to answer your questions. You can ask the people
Right.
who are learning with you, because everyone's going to have different strengths.
Yeah, and those strengths grow over time too. Like some of the people I met, years ago that weren't very good at a thing are now experts at a thing, and I'm friends with them, so I'm able to be like, "Yo, can you look at this thing?" And they can give me like legit feedback, right? Whereas if I was just a new person talking to them, they probably wouldn't respond because they don't know who I am, and they're advancing their career and all that stuff too. So
I also like the idea of doing something deliberately. Oh, wait, hang on. This is we're on 9 now. I'm looking at number 8 still, a little bit, but it relates to 9 as well, I'm sure, maybe. I like the idea of deliberately doing something silly and dumb. So you're saying make bad things. I think that's a little bit tricky because for me, I know it's bad, but if I deliberately make it bad, then I might be confused about, well, should I make the controls bad? So for me, it's the conversation of making it silly or dumb or something where I'm like, I don't want it. It's just a silly little fun thing that I was doing. And it gives you a little bit of an escape hatch. If it doesn't work out, you're like, well, I wasn't trying to make it good anyway. And I think you can do that for the first few, when you're being a bit hobbyist. And you can then start to make good stuff, but you set your expectations lower. And if you need that as a person, some people don't need that kind of, that shield against judgment. But if you do, then you can just say, well, we're making a game about a dog dragging its butt. It's not supposed to be good. And
You knew
secretly you're trying to make it good, but it's silly and it's quirky and people take it through that lens. The more serious you're trying to be with your game, I think the more critical people are about when it's not quite there.
Sure.
And so make friends. Number 10, should we go number 10?
Let's do it. Let's go to number 10. So this is a little bit advanced, but it is a really good way to level up your skills if you're kind of in this arena, and that's the freelance game dev and make client games. So one of the things I did early on, actually, in my game dev career was to start making apps and stuff for hire, and it was a good way to kind of support myself, but also I had to learn a lot of technology and a lot of different skills that came along with making games. I had to learn how to make stuff fun, but I also had to learn that like clients really don't like programmer art. And if you show them a fun game with bad art, they're like, this looks like garbage. Can you make it look better, please? So things like that, experiences like that, made me go like, okay, well, you know what? That's important to them. That's like their first perception of the thing. So the aesthetics and the kind of the visuals, even though I thought they were less important than the programming, it turns out that's actually the first thing you see. It's the first thing you interact with before you even play the game. It's already in your brain. So it's kind of important, right? So help me pay attention to a lot of different stuff. It helped me communicate better. It helped me understand why things are the way they are, because a client would be like, why did you do it this way? And then because it felt good, usually wasn't a good enough answer. Like, I don't know. It's just, the jump felt like it should be that high, So I started having to articulate why I felt the way that I do it. And that translated to my inner monologue too, of like, okay, I understand the intricacies, the relationship between the jump height and the platform distance, right? Like all of that stuff. Are we making a fast-paced game or a slower game? If it's fast-paced game, we want them to run around real fast. If it's slow and chill, we want them to be, slower. Is it on the moon? Because then it's like jumping slower. Is it on Earth? Is, faster gravity? All that stuff.
Tim, a really great point from the OK is number 10 seems impossible. Where to even do that? And so, you possibly had some connections or you had some people you knew, etc. But to say, just go and make some games for clients, most people look at that and say, oh, what is that? What's even a client? How do I, where, I'm in a country where there's no clients around in my neighborhood. What do I do? Do we have something tangible we can say to folks on how to actually put yourself out there to do that?
Yeah, you can go on Upwork.com, which is a freelance website. You can go through the posted jobs that they have there. When some people say, I need a game developed for whatever, and then you can just send your proposal to them. And by proposal, you just say, I read through your thing, I can make your game, and it's going to cost X amount of dollars. And I think in the beginning, if you don't have any kind of portfolio, it's going to be a little bit harder. So if you've got some game jam stuff, you can show like some screenshots of some things you made. That'd be helpful to include. And then once I would charge, lower amounts in the beginning to try and just get the contracts. And then once you've gotten the contracts and the work history, you can build up to bigger stuff. But you can just work your way up. My first freelance gig, I had experience freelancing before I started freelancing games. So I've done a bunch of other stuff. I did marketing, I did SEO, I did web design and all that stuff. So I kind of learned, but the first website I did was $200, I think. And it took me a month and it was like a lot of work. And it was way over my head. But you work your way up from that. Right. And, I realized later that you could charge thousands of dollars for a website, not $200. And I was like, oh, well, let me get in on that. And then website people needed marketing, and it just goes from there, right? So,
yeah. Tim's talking about Upwork, so Upwork.com. Obviously, also Fiverr.
Yeah, Fiverr's another good one. Yeah, it's
also
totally.
There is Discord servers that have stuff in them. I was talking to one of my friends. I had no idea. He's like, yeah, I've been doing contracts, and he found them all in a Discord server about Blender. You have to be really, careful like with any of them, but it was the same thing. It's like there's different established Discords too.
Yeah, and it's a very advanced, it's kind of advanced, right? Like you got to have some skill,
really
you got to have some people skills, you got to understand what contracting means, and you got to have written agreements, and there's a lot of stuff to it, but this is 12 ways to kind of get better at game development. And I'm telling you, this helped me get better at game development quite a bit.
Oh, yeah. When you have someone else saying, I want the game to do this, I think it really helps you as well, because it takes out a little bit of that, what do I do? I could do anything. When you have a client saying, I need someone who can build this and do it that way and make it look like that, then you've got a very crisp problem to solve. And I think that can allow you to move with a different sort of velocity than if you're just sitting there and saying, I'm going to make a game for fun or for me. So I think those constraints help a lot. Similar with game jams. Often you have the constraints, and that helps you to say, okay, I've got to do one of these. Let's go.
You know what freelancing does that game jams doesn't do, though, too, and I had to learn this lesson, is sometimes the client wants something that you don't agree with. Sometimes you think it's a really dumb idea, and you're forced to kind of make it good by yourself. And that was a big skill to learn, because I'm like, this is the worst way to do this, and this is a horrible, dumb idea, but this person is paying me and they want this thing this way. And so I would do it that way, but then I'd just be like, I have to figure out how to make that work, like in a game. And that kind of creative challenge really, again, helped me pay attention to what works and what doesn't. And kind of, it made me, whereas normally I would just be like, that's a dumb idea, I'd throw it out. It made me iterate on the dumb idea until I had something tangible and good.
I'm curious for folks who are watching live at the moment. We've gone through 10 so far. Tim's got another couple. So far, which of the points that we've made, which of these 10, a reminder that you think is most relevant to you? So there's probably nothing in here you're like, oh my God, I completely didn't know that at all. But which of these is the reminder that you needed to have, or you need to tell yourself regularly out of these points? So we'll jump to number 11, where you guys are typing in the chat to let us know.
So
ones thus far.
Number 11 is completely different direction, right? And it's refuse to do any kind of freelance and commit to just hobbyist development, right? Never make commercial games. Make that decision. Just, you can do this as a hobby.
How does that make you better at game development by saying, I'm never going to try to make this a game that could make money?
Right. So different people are motivated by different things. Different people are kind of crippled by different things, right? So all of these points aren't designed for someone to do all of them, because some of them actually contradict each other, right? So you should pick the ones that work for you, and you should discard the ones that don't work for you. Now, committing to hobbyist game development, I think, has a lot of advantages. One, it can give you the permission for yourself to make the stuff that you want to make, right? A lot of people, when they're making commercial games or they're making freelance games, freelance, you don't really have a choice. You have to make what they tell you. Commercial games, you have to make, a lot of people look to Steam, or they look to commercially viable ideas, or they try to make things viral, or they try to do their marketing, so you can stop worrying about what everybody else thinks and just start making things you want to make, right? The other thing it does is all of that marketing work, all the stuff you think you need about Twitter accounts and you got to promote stuff and GIFs and all that stuff, that just goes away.
Pages.
Yeah, forget all that stuff, man. Just do the fun stuff. Just make the fun games. And you'll find a lot of times by removing a lot of those kind of, I wouldn't say barriers, but just removing the workload can actually free you up creatively to make better stuff and just kind of focus on making something that you find really, really cool and really, really interesting. And I find hobbyist games generally tend to, like when they're made just because the person wants them to exist, I think they have a little bit more soul a lot of times in the games that are made to be commercial, you know?
Yeah. I think I have to focus on like creating. I like creation, so I want to create stuff. So trying to focus on every time people talk about like how much money they want to make or how much of it, it's like I can't focus on that. I will not be able to create that way. I'm a creator. So that's what drives me. So I think that's what would be like that. I mean, I could actually do commercial or hobbyist as long as I'm creating. That's what I like.
Right.
So it's really that motivation. So I do think that thinking they have to have do commercial stuff or work for somebody could cripple somebody, or just focusing on hobby too.
Yeah, it does. And you have to understand yourself, like what's going to get you motivated or what's not. Like some people, the idea of launching a commercial game is just so motivating that they're on it, right? And some people, it's so crippling that they're like get frozen in fear. And, you know, so figure out who you are and kind of which one of these points are compatible with how you work.
I've seen a number of folks saying the reminder about keeping the game small, keeping the scope small. Could be a live cast we do at some point, which is how to reduce scope or how to keep scope small. Because I think conceptually it makes sense, but as we went through with our beekeeper example, the tangibility of it is, but how do I do that? And you kind of needed to have tried to walk across the country before you know you can't do it. And so game development, there's so many different things that you don't know yet. So how can we speed people's journey up? That could be a future conversation if people are interested in it.
That's definitely true for me.
I think all this leads into our final point, number 12, which again goes against freelance and hobbyist, is launch a game on Steam. Launching a game on Steam teaches you so many things that I don't think you'd get anywhere else. And again, this isn't compatible with everybody, but some people this is super motivating too. Lots of people will tell you what's wrong with your commercial game once they pay money for it. Like once they give you money and they don't care about you at all and they played your thing, and they're going to be honest in their reviews. They're going to be thumbs down. The colors suck. They're just going to say it, right? In Steam reviews. So that's one aspect, is you're going to get a lot of honest feedback based on a customer perspective, which is kind of like the most purest form, right? Like someone's just telling you exactly what they think because they paid money for your thing. The other thing is there's a whole list of things that a lot of people never learn because they are at that end between game being 80% done and game being live on Steam. There's a lot of work in there. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of publishing. There's a lot of Steam achievements. There's a lot of controller compatibility. There's a lot of when you unplug the controller, do the keyboard controls work? You know, like there's a lot of like localization sometimes. Like there's a lot of stuff in there. And if you want to make games for a long time, you want to make commercial games, going through that process can teach you a lot and it can make you better at it, right? It can make you quicker and make you faster, make you understand. Going through the back end of game development can make you understand for your next game how to make the back end easier. Because there are some things you can do in the beginning of the game, right? If you develop and program that correctly, you can save yourself a lot of time on the back end, having gone through that process. So
now,
going through the process.
Can I put my simple game on Steam, Tim?
You can put any game on Steam.
A simple game?
Bible just launched on Steam. You can, anything you want to do, you can put on Steam.
So make your little game where you move one city over and put that on Steam. That's
I don't think.
Thing to do. Yeah, I feel like they have to be like grandiose games before I can put them on Steam.
I think a lot of people think that, and I think that's why they add so much stuff. They add them complex because they think it's not good enough. It doesn't have enough stuff. I need to make it better. I need to make it better, and they get stuck in that loop, and then they make a big thing that they can never finish, and then they start over and they do that loop again. It's really common. It's really, really common. We make jokes about it, but like seriously, like I've been through this loop. So many people I know have been through this loop. You can launch tiny little things. It's okay. Matter of fact, there's a huge trend right now after Vampire Survivors. there's a huge trend of micro games. That's what they're calling them, like really tiny little, experiences. And not only is it fantastic, right? But you can totally just, a game doesn't have to be anything. A game can be anything. And if you can go through that process and learn a bunch, and that can be the only thing you get out of it, like you can not worry about the sales, right? You could just worry about learning the things.
I have a Laurie, were you pulling up a visual of Vampire? What was it? Vampire.
I was looking at pulling up a visual of it.
Maybe you can show us.
And then I promptly did not. Vampire. What was it?
Vampire Survivors.
Sorry, I saw you typing. I saw your screen. Maybe it was something else.
Sorry. Yeah, this game is basically a horde survival game, and it kind of kicked off a whole genre. But it was also launched at $2.99, which most games don't launch at on Steam. And then after that, not only did a bunch of people join into that genre, but then a bunch of $2.99 games came after that too. It's a simple game, you run around, you stay away from a horde, and then you get upgrades, and you just survive as long as you can.
They
just recently raised the price to $5,
so I don't know how to maximize this. I'm an Xbox player.
Video, bottom
still.
Right. Yeah.
The gameplay loop for Brian says Vampire Survivor is really simplistic, but the gameplay loop itself is addicting. Gameplay loop itself is addicting. Yes. So, but this is an example of a game that if you had shown me, I'd be like, dude, go ahead and launch it on Steam, but like, it could use some improvements. It may not do. Yeah, it may not do super well, but you'll learn a bunch of stuff if you launch it on Steam, and they made $100 million. So,
and sometimes you gotta throw something at the wall and see if it sticks. It's like who the heck knows? There's so much luck associated with this.
Yeah.
But if you wait 10 years to have your one roll of the dice, then you've got less chance. And if you're rolling the dice every month, so.
Yeah.
Tim, I know this is I didn't get approval to do this, but I've got a sneaky 12B. So I know, right? So I would say as a technique you can do to get better at making good games and practice your game designer skills is take a project that you've worked on, project you've got, or if you've followed a tutorial, if you've gone through any of our courses and we've created a project together, then give yourself certain amount of time, we'll say an hour, to make the game completely different by only changing the tuning variables, changing the values, not by adding out any extra code. So you get there and say, okay, we've made a platformer. How can I make this a completely different game? How can I be crazy with this? How can I make it feel different? So the character speed, the jump height, the number of enemies on the screen, the speed the enemies move, the damage that they do, the health that I've got. So what if I make it, I'm a tank, and there's kind of like what we're looking at there, bullet hell stuff. Instead of a couple of enemies bouncing around, there's 100 enemies. What if I do it the other way around? What if I make myself like super fragile, where just one hit and it's game over? What if I make it that I'm really quick, but if I hit the spikes, I explode? So I think by doing that and forcing yourself to say, how many different types of feeling variations can I get? Maybe you say, I'm going to try to make 5 different vibes of this game. Then you move away from this I'm trying to make it feel just this particular way, and you accidentally can discover things like this game is really fun if everyone moves really slowly, and a decision I make now by shooting, there's consequences like, no, that bullet's gonna get me, or you do that and it might suck, but it'll give you ideas and it'll get you into the habit of solving problems with tuning rather than solving problems with features. And I think this is something critical for any indie game developer. If you can solve the problem by just changing some numbers, making the character blue instead of red so it looks different, scaling it up, you're like, well, there we go. Now it feels, I've got another 3 enemies and this level now feels really interesting. Rather than saying, okay, I need the enemies to have this different ability that's going to take a week of coding and figuring things out.
Yeah, I agree with that completely.
Cool.
And that leads us to our bonus point, number 13.
Our bonus.
Yeah, Rick added one, I added one. It's fine. Never give up. only real failure is stopping. If you think about it, that's the only way you can really fail, right? If you do things wrong, okay, but are you going to stop? If you stop, okay, well, maybe that's a failure. But if you keep going, and I don't think quitting is the same thing as failing, right? I think you can stop a project and start a new one. I think that's totally cool. I don't think you got to feel bad about that. I think you should pay attention if you do it a couple times in a row and you've got a habit of it. You could be like, hey, maybe, I shouldn't keep starting projects and keep starting them over. Like maybe I should stick to one and do it. But I think at the end of the day, like putting in your hours is a good way to get better at game development, right? Just putting in the time, doing stuff.
The important thing is the distinction between stopping the project and stopping your improvement. So quitting, what you're talking about here, Tim, quitting a project, that's all right. Projects come and go. But quitting on your dream, quitting on your progress, or putting on a hold for a year, this is kind of tough, I'm not going to do anything for a while, a year goes by and you're like, I wish I'd just kept kind of making Game Jam games in that year, I'd be so much better now. So don't quit on being better at what it is that you're up to.
100%.
Projects come and go.
Yeah.
I did, this is a request for anyone who's watching, well, everyone's watching at the moment because they're watching. If you guys wouldn't mind just hitting the like button. If you like what we're doing, hit the thumbs down button if you don't like what we're doing. Just so
don't do that.
YouTube and whoever knows that this is okay. If you've watched this far, then surely there's some reason to click a thumbs up. So that helps. If you guys can just do one of those for us.
Hit the algorithm stuffs.
I think this is a valid question by Lottie. How come Rick's bonus is a letter and Tim gets a whole extra number? That's because Tim runs the show, Lottie. Tim is very wisely when he's given a number. No!
Rick said the word. He didn't ask for permission. That's why he didn't get it. I think I just kicked him off because he tried to overthrow
I was
going to
put in a joke one about one of them should be Make Draggy Dog Game, but then I don't want it to be an official one, but I did kind of want to do it.
You just blame it on
it was
Rick.
happening. It was happening. I could do that. I'd be like, I didn't write that.
We don't know. We have no way of knowing.
It's really good too. It's like super serious.
Yeah, we can make any point that we want, and we can make it in Rick's voice.
And it looks like Rick is agreeing with us.
Guys, hey, you should totally do this stuff in game development. We can make him say whatever we want.
Mate.
Hello, mate. Watch out for spiders. They're scary. Have you guys ever seen pictures of spiders in Australia? Oh my god.
Have you ever seen pictures of anything in Australia?
Terrifying. The kangaroos are nice, but I found out they eat the kangaroos. My Australian friend. This is going off the rails.
Here's a question for you, Tim. You're like, how do you keep your fingers as close to the pulse of gamers as possible? Which I think we covered in the early ones, but it was a question, and it was
I think the spirit of this question is probably from a commercial perspective of like, you want to keep your fingers close to gamers because you want to understand what they want because you want to make games that sells to them. I think Splattercat is a great way to do that. YouTubers in general. I love watching YouTube kind of Let's Plays, but I also like looking at the view count on the videos. So there's a lot of YouTubers that will play new indie games every day, but then sometimes the views will be like 50,000, sometimes the views will be like 150,000. And so my brain goes, okay, why did that video get 150,000 views, right? Was it the title? Was it the thumbnail? Was it the subject? And I've noticed, for example, that like fantasy games, necromancer type of stuff, lately, it's been getting a lot of views. And so I go, you know what? Like maybe that's something I should pay attention to, right? It's a pattern. It's a thing. So I think Let's Players and streamers are probably a good spot to do that. The other thing is you can hang out. I think this is marketing 101, but figuring out who you want to understand and who you want to target and then going where they hang out, right? And maybe they hang out on forums, maybe they hang out in Facebook groups, maybe they hang out in, different social media sites, just trying to think like them and hang out with where they're at. You can learn a lot about them.
I was going to say, here's another one, but then I lost it. Are we going to be posting these somewhere? Somebody was asking that too.
Yeah, these videos go on YouTube.
I'm sorry. I just went over
Can you post
no, the list. They were interested in the list. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's summarize. We'll post them. But number one is play more games, right? So you want to play as many games as possible. Try to understand stuff that maybe you don't like. Play through stuff, and you can do this for free if you go on Epic, if you go on Twitch, if you go on Itch, you can do that. Watch Let's
them.
Players as streamers, right? Laura, you want to do this with me? You do number 3.
I was saying it at the same time you did. Join game jams.
Join game jams, do some stuff.
Itch.io has a lot of them, and a lot of different people will have their own too, but often they're posted on Itch.
Yeah, it's pretty commonplace. Build smaller things, make smaller stuff, just whatever you think is big, whatever you think is small, just even smaller than that. And then number 5.
And then seriously build even smaller things, like smaller than what you're thinking right now.
Like whatever you think is small, like make it smaller, okay? Ant size. Is this a game for ants?
Right. Yeah, is this a game for ants? I like it.
Show your things to more people and get some good feedback,
Give feedback and play other devs' games.
Boom. Make bad things on purpose and try to make them look good.
And make friends with people interested in game dev, which I really push. I really believe that.
Yeah.
I am.
I'm antisocial. I don't do that as much as I should. Make freelance game dev and make games for clients.
Or
commit to hobbyist development and never make commercial games. Or
launch a game on Steam. Lots of people tell you what's wrong with it. And then let me see if I can
do all of those.
And then Rick got an extra letter. Sneaky Rick extra when he added that. Practice tuning by only changing values, not features. I definitely agree with this. Try not to add systems. Try not to add complexity because sometimes you just don't need it. And then number 13. What's number 13, Lori?
Never give up. The only real failure is stopping. And I really do believe that. I tell myself that all the time. Just keep going. Just put one foot ahead of the other. If that's your goal, that's really your goal. Just keep going.
Progress, man. Progress. And progress doesn't have to be leaps and bounds. It can be a millimeter. It can just be one step forward. That's totally cool. Just keep moving forward. All righty then. That is our stream. I would like to say thank you to everybody that came. And, I'm sorry that Rick had to add a bonus tip and get kicked out. But sometimes it happens. You got to flex your authority a little bit, or maybe it's just bad modems. I don't know. We'll never know. But thank you guys for coming out. And we will see you next week. What's the subject for next week? Let me look. What are we talking about? Top 7 game dev myths explored. What are the top 7 game dev myths? I don't know yet, but we're going to go through them. We're going to find what they are. By the way, if you have any suggestions, feel free to tweet at GameDev.tv and just give us suggestions on topics you like covered. Feel free to do that. But thank you, everybody, for coming. Lori, thank you for joining us. Rick, if you're watching, thank you for being here part of the time. And we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.